We are about 5 days away from the new Disney Plus Star Wars TV show, The ACOLYTE. And despite the many hesitations that have been shown by folks online and my own skepticism, I am trying my hardest to be excited for this show and what it could potentially do for Star Wars. What is going on, folks? Let me just apologize for the lack of content lately. I have been sick as hell and still not 100%, not fully over it. And while I still feel like absolute boo-boo, it's time to put out a video, and I want to talk about the ACOLYTE because we have that coming out next week. So let's just dive into it and talk about it. We've gotten some new footage, new information about the show, and I think it's worth trying to get some hype for it because even though Star Wars is in a pretty bad state right now, and I don't really think anybody can deny that, I try my best to look forward to the next Star Wars project that interests me. And I think that we've seen enough of the ACOLYTE in its footage and information that maybe this is gonna be good, I hope. So getting into this, I'm going to vent. I'm going to talk and vent and express my hopes and concerns for the show. And while I'm talking, let me know if you agree with me or if you think that you can ease my worries and concerns, because that would be a big help. But jumping into what we know and can expect, we know this series takes place about 200 years before the Phantom Menace, the High Republic era. We got the story of one girl and older sister who is maybe hell-bent on getting revenge against the Jedi for taking her younger sister as payment, we'll say, for providing protection for her village against these raiders. And apparently the Jedi will fail at this task and the village will be destroyed and raided anyway, pushing the older sister more towards her hate and anger for the Jedi, and probably is the ACOLYTE for the series. Now, truthfully, I think this is a pretty interesting angle to take. I think it's pretty cool to follow somebody who was essentially left behind because of her age. She's too old, right? And she just watched her younger sister be taken away from her and her people for the greater good. And then when the Jedi don't make good on that deal, she essentially realizes that she just lost everything for nothing. And now obviously this would push her or anybody against the Jedi. Maybe not evil, but definitely enough to dislike and maybe even view them as the enemy. So off rip, story-wise, I'm interested. Now through footage and photos, we also see what we can expect as far as the action and the fight choreography that goes on, and I think that that looks decent too compared to what we've had before. Now, I don't think that any Disney Plus Star Wars content has been able to live up to Nick Gillard's lightsaber choreography in the prequel era. Everything since has kind of been below the bar that the prequels set, in terms of fight choreography at least. But I do think that we have seen gradual improvement from, say, The Force Awakens all the way to Ahsoka. We had Ahsoka's duel with Maul in season 7 of Clone Wars, and I do count that because it was mocap. We also had the fight between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth in season 2 of Mandalorian, and that was pretty awesome too. And the fight between Ahsoka and Anakin of episode 5 of the Ahsoka show, and I thought that was really interesting and badass to watch. More so for Anakin, but you know, a lot of Ahsoka fights. Those are probably my personal favorite fights within the Disney Star Wars era. And the ACOLYTE does seem to be upping their fight choreography a bit, adding a bit of the karate-like flair or some kung fu style type of force fighting, not that BS that Ezra did in the Ahsoka show. And that draws me even further in. Some of the moments that irritated me the most about the Star Wars films was it never seemed like the Jedi or the Sith had any hand-to-hand combat training. And I know they did, but in the movies, it felt like they didn't. I'm telling you, as much as I love the prequels, as much as I love Revenge of the Sith, this little BS kick that Anakin and Obi-Wan do in the final fight of Revenge of the Sith absolutely pisses me off. I like the idea of these master swordsmen being able to throw down and go toes when they need to. And they put out this new clip that we got about a week ago. It made me pretty positive on the fights in the ACOLYTE. It seems much more fluid, fast-paced, with harder hits than what we've seen in the past. And it looks more like a fight rather than just two people practicing choreography, and that to me is a dub. I'm also interested in the kind of lore that they bring into the show. This being after the Old Republic but before the New Republic of the prequels leaves the door wide open for Legends lore to be brought into play. I'll get into my concerns for the show and Leslie Headland in just a minute, but one thing that I can say on the positive side of things is that according to Leslie Headland, she is a huge Old Republic, or more specific, KOTOR fan. So much that Darth Traya was said to be an inspiration to her for the show. And as a fan, you love to hear things like that. Too many times we've gotten people who are not fans of the franchise calling the shots. They either only know a little bit of the IP or not even fans at all, who come in and do their own version of Star Wars, and it is proven to not be as effective as Disney or Lucasfilm would have hoped. And I think that showed with Andor. Tony Gilroy back in 2022 flat out said that he wasn't a fan of the franchise, and regardless of those who liked it, the numbers prove that Andor was one of the lowest rated Disney Plus Star Wars shows in viewership. I think you need fans of this franchise franchise to be at the forefront of these projects. At very least, people who are willing to dive into this world during their research and do it justice. And I think that there is potential of that in the Acolyte. I know a lot of people flipped out about the light whip that was shown in the Acolyte, but that is pulled straight out of Legends. If you've ever read the Darth Bane trilogy, his little love interest Geek'D, that was her weapon of choice, was a light whip. Now it is a bit different as far as on screen, it's a bit weird, but it's not outside of the Star Wars world. And I think doing things like this, taking something from Legends and putting it into the films, allows for fresh ideas and doing different things, but it also stays true to Star Wars and the mythology of it that's been around for 30 plus years. There's even speculation that Abeloth, the mother, may have some kind of part to play in this show. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that would be as Legends as it could possibly get. So on that front, it does make me a little bit excited about the show, but there are some concerns and I want to get into those too. And now again, I want to like this show. I hope that it blows my mind away and that I walk away feeling refreshed and excited about another Star Wars project again. And that's not to say that I haven't liked any of the Disney Plus Star Wars content. Bad Batch, Ahsoka, Mando season 1 and 2, Tales of the Jedi were all projects that I really enjoyed, and I maintained a hype throughout the series. However, there is behind the scenes information and even things from the trailers that raises concern for me. And that's what I want to hit first, is the concerns from the trailers. Watching each one of these TV spots or teasers or trailers, my first thought was, man, this looks a bit cheap. Now, before in my research, I had found out that the Acolyte had a budget of $49 million. That's what I was seeing for the longest time, which is $41 million less than the Kenobi show and $201 million less than Andor. And from what I've seen in the trailers, it definitely looks like that kind of a budget. Now, there was also an article that came out yesterday from the Bespin Bulletin that said that the actual budget for the Acolyte was $180 million, which raises some concerns because some of the sets in the Acolyte, they clearly look like sets, and it doesn't make me feel immersed into the world. I think bad lighting definitely has a part to play in that. Some of the shots look a bit dull, dark, and kind of flat. I feel like CW set pieces have kind of became the standard for a bad look, but it's exactly what it looks like, and I hope that gets a bit touched up. I also have concerns for the characters themselves. Some actors in here I do enjoy in other projects like Carrie-Anne Moss in The Matrix or Jodie Turner-Smith from Queen and Slim and Without Remorse, and I love them in those projects. But even from the trailers, I haven't been able to form any kind of connection or interest or bond into any of these characters, and I worry that most of these characters are going to be uninteresting and won't make me care, with maybe the exception of Amanda Stenberg and her character May. The review showed a lot of positivity in regards to her and her character and how she's played. And I do find intrigue in her story and figuring out what her struggle and her motive really are. But other than her, I don't really have much anticipation for anyone else. And I think my bigger concerns about the show lie with the behind the scenes of the series and the potential for personal agendas being pushed into the narrative. It's no secret that Leslie Headland is very involved and vocal when it comes to the culture war. Her comments regarding George Lucas at very least could have been delivered so much better.
This is like what we understand to be Star Wars, like the idea that like that only came from George Lucas, that only George Lucas holds the key for what we understand to be Star Wars is just untrue. The idea that like when you're hiring a director, that everyone is sitting in there waiting for George Lucas and not for the person who's going to know to hire Ralph McQuarrie, that's the problem. That's the misogyny and the problem with the auteur myth as it stands today.
If you are the kind of person that feels that George Lucas is the only one who holds all of the answers to Star Wars, I don't think that makes you a misogynist in any way. I think that makes you someone who values the creator and recognizes that yes, the maker does have the answers. However, I don't think it is only him that can make good Star Wars. If I felt that way, then I wouldn't even praise Dave Filoni the way that I do. But I think that what she said and the way that she delivered it was a very boneheaded way to deliver her message. Also, some of the comments that were made by some of the cast last year at Star Wars Celebration has me concerned about where this story is going to go. First, we have Jodie Turner-Smith, who went up there and praised her character for being a powerful woman in a women-centric project. She also said that Star Wars has always been patriarchal.
She's a powerful leader. Yes, yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be in that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
And straight up, that is wrong. That's false. Star Wars has some of the most strong and important women in all of cinema. Padme was a queen, the youngest queen in the history of Naboo, and she was fierce as hell as a queen, and her people absolutely loved her. Not to mention that she was badass with a blaster and consistently active in the Senate. Leia was equally, if not more fierce than her mother, as a princess and leader of the rebellion, and she played a huge part in the success of the rebellion. There's been multiple Lady Jedis who were on the council. Jocasta Nu held the key to some of the most important knowledge of the galaxy. Ahsoka herself is very powerful and an impactful female character. And now we even have Omega, who, you get my point? And there is so many more examples of that, whether on the light side or the dark side or working for themselves or who have you. Secondly, we got Charlie Barnett, who went up there and said, the beautiful thing about Star Wars is that there is no good and evil, depending on where you're standing.
I mean, the best parts about Star Wars is there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on, truly. You know what I mean? That you can look at any angle and see yourself relayed through all.
Again, that is completely false. Star Wars was and has always been about good versus evil. Very clear lines. Yoda and Sidious, Luke and Vader. And I guess what I wonder about is if the show is going to try and convince us that the dark side is not fully bad and that it's okay to use the dark side even if it's just a little bit. And I do think that that is dangerous territory to step in. Because listen, I actually struggled with this idea because there's no denying that the Jedi of the prequels were wrong. They were supposed to be keepers of the peace and became puppets and police for the Republic, getting way more politically involved than they should have. You can also argue that taking younglings from their family as infants is pretty horrific. But I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers, and I think that his explanation definitely holds some weight. It's the morality of Star Wars that is in the question. Are you selfish or selfless? Anakin's argument when he calls out the hypocrisy of the Jedi is valid, but the moment that he uses that as justification to do horrible things, killing the Jedi, killing younglings, he has gone full evil, regardless of his motivations. And that's signified on Mustafar when his eyes turn Sith yellow. He has now crossed the line. I think that the Acolyte should not try to change the morality of Star Wars, and should not try to push the idea that just because you use the dark side doesn't make you evil, because it does. What is needed for one to embrace the dark side is the acceptance that you will do whatever is necessary to achieve your goals. Even if your goals and your intentions are good, it's the whatever is necessary part that is the defining factor. Can you be redeemed? Of course. Do the best villains always view themselves as the hero? Absolutely. Thanos' whole mission was to give the universe a fresh start, that the world would thrive for years to come with half the people and double the resources. But he still killed millions, if not billions, to achieve that goal, even sacrificing his own daughter. I say all this to express my concerns for the Acolyte fundamentally changing the morality of this world and the rules that have been set up by George. And if they do this, I don't know if I could rock with it. I am hoping for Acolyte to be a banger. There has been so much back and forth online, and it's definitely divided, but I hope that the show is a well-told story and that it feels like Star Wars, because it's hard to explain, but if you're truly a fan, you know what feels like Star Wars, and you definitely can feel when it's off or when it's not hitting the mark. But it does also seem that this show is going to hit on some of the mystical and mythological elements of what Star Wars is. And Leslie, she said a lot of boneheaded comments, but she's also said some great things expressing her love for Star Wars, from the films to Legends. She does seem very nerdy when it comes to Star Wars, and that is a great thing, and I hope that it shows next week, June 4th. And I've said it before in one of my old videos, but I'm definitely going to do a review video for the 2 premiere episodes that come out on Tuesday. I might even do a stream. I've never done a stream on YouTube yet, so if I do, let me know if you would actually show up for that, probably sometime Wednesday. But it might be one of those situations where I have so much to say that I don't know if I could put it all in a video. So maybe we'll do that on a stream. So if I do a stream on Wednesday, let me know if you'll be able to make it. Do me a favor and like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated so you don't miss that review video or the potential stream. And let me know what you're feeling, man, when it comes to Acolyte, and what about it got you geeked up, and also what you're worried about. And listen, I'm all up for the civil debate in the comments. So y'all be smooth. Thank you for listening to me talk about the Acolyte. We're gonna keep the content going. Eventually I'm gonna not be sick, so we're not stopping. But y'all be smooth, and I'm gonna catch you on the next one. I'm out.